Order the Charter Revision Commission of Monday, July 22nd, 2024 at 2 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Dr. Root,
Here.
Vice Chair Colianis,
Yes.
Dr. Gavalas.
Here.
Ms. Jennings.
Here.
Mr. Kaskudis.
Here.
Mr. Seaman.
Here.
Ms. Chair Panny.
Here.
We will start with public comments today. They're limited to 4 minutes, and please introduce yourself and your address.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
My name is Jack Burke. I live at 400 Grand Boulevard. I'm part of a small group of people called Preserve Tarpon. We're a small group that always looks for preservation. We sent you guys an email, and I was just here to reinforce in it that we were certainly support a 5-story limit. We would probably like to see even more. We would probably like to see 2 to 3 stories in the downtown, along the docks, and in some of the historic neighborhoods. There's so many examples of why we need it. One place is Safety Harbor. A friend of mine lives in a huge condo that's built right off of Main Street that's way out of scale. They recently put just a 3-story high building on Main Street, which is totally out of scale with all the other buildings. So I think, maybe we're not dealing with that problem now, but one day it'll come to this town, and we really think we'd like to see preserve the character of our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there someone else who'd like to make a public comment?
Made it just in time. Thank you. Peter Lackus, 514 Ashland Avenue. Couple of things. First, I want to follow up on what Mr. Kaskudis brought up a while back with the hospital when Mr. Quattlebaum, I believe it is,
Quattlebaum.
was here. And Mr. Quattlebaum was trying to basically say you didn't need the piece in the charter about the hospital because it's in the lease. We need to continue to protect the city and leave it in the charter. Because if for some reason 50 years is a long time, they go and try to flip the hospital and there's changes, we need to continue to have that protection. Also, I wanted to follow up a little bit, and maybe now that Ms. Vincent's here, y'all can get a little more discussion about it, about Commissioner Koulianis's recommendation about limiting heights and how to do that. I think that's a wise idea. I think something that citizens of Tarpon would appreciate. He gave you plenty of exemptions as far as on US 19 and maybe certain corridors, but I think for the predominance of the city, some type of height limit would be appropriate. Also I mentioned when I was here last with regards to the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan, but I also mentioned I believe the sustainability plan needs to be incorporated into the charter. And not only the sustainability plan, but also the sustainability committee. As you know, in the powers, the board can dissolve or disband committees at their pleasure. And I think with the situation that we face here in Tarpon with so many rivers, bayous, and creeks, we need to solidify the sustainability plan and the Sustainability Committee into the charter. Just coming in today, some of you who live back around, bayous are already flooded. They got the signs at Hope and Canal and Roosevelt already. So we know it's an issue. I just would like to protect the city to make sure we lock those things into place. One other thing, and I'm not sure if this could be done through the Maritime Committee, but As I mentioned, you've got the comprehensive plan, the strategic plan. I'd like to have the sustainability plan in there. Also in your charter, you have two boards that are mentioned, Planning and Zoning Board and the Boarding of Adjustments. I've mentioned the sustainability plan to be, committee to possibly be added, and that could be done maybe when you put it in with the plan. But I think it's time we need to revise and revitalize the Maritime Committee, and if necessary, put that into the charter. We all know the river is our lifeblood, not only for commerce, but for our tourism. But I've pushed for this. I honestly believe that we can revitalize our port. We can revitalize our waterway. There are many things that could be done as far as getting grants. I've mentioned to the City Commission about they do facade grants, they do grants here and there. A maritime grant to offer to boats or companies that would bring in people or boats to redo sponge fishing, other types of marine activities. Marine Max bought that big property across the street, and I sent it to the City Commission. They have an intern program to train people to work on boats and stuff. We've got that potential, and it's industrial, and it's beyond just the base of tourism. My time's run out.
Thank you very, yeah, you're on time, but thank you very much for your insights. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
I'd like to make comments on his comments.
Yes, go ahead.
I would just like to point out that most of the things that Mr. Delakis brought up are regurgitations of things that the committee has already taken action on to put into the recommendations and charter changes. The Sustainability Committee, we said we were going to put on with a plan, and we're discussing the heights today. It was already on the agenda, so most if not everything has already been discussed and taken action on.
Yes, in case you missed it, we are keeping the hospital in the plan. We have going forward with the Marine Commerce Committee as a recommendation of the Board of Commissioners as opposed to putting it in the charter. The building heights we're talking about today. Let's see, where else is, we're talking about putting the sustainability plan in the charter as well. So that's where we are. Okay, did you have something to add? Go ahead.
Well, we got an email from Denise Menino asking that it not be added to the charter.
Yes, we did. But we'll be discussing that as well. Okay, any other comments on the comments? Nope. Thank you very much for your engagement in this important issue. And we're going to move on. I'd like to invite Renee Vincent, Planning and Zoning Director, to come and talk to us about changes. We had two actions for you. One is we were in discussions on the CRA board. There was a suggestion that we add citizens to it. And in later discussions, there was a comment that, that there's a plan to add an advisory board that would have citizen input. And we wanted to close that up with your thoughts and what your plans are and insights are on that.
Which are we tackling first?
Well, that's the CRA board and
Okay.
adding an advisory board to it.
Okay, so by Pinellas County requirements, they dictate that when we have a CRA, that the Board of Commissioners has to sit as the advisory board. This didn't get relayed to me that you were going to be talking about this, so I haven't done any homework, but
I'm sorry, did you say that the Board of Commissioners is the advisory board?
the board, they are the
one?
agency. So you
Okay,
have an agency
okay.
board, so that has to be the Board of Commissioners.
Right,
Whether or not you can add advisory members to that, I'm not sure. If we establish, we've adopted the finding of necessity for the Central Tarpon Springs CRA, and we've transmitted that to the county. Pinellas County now, anytime a new CRA is being formed, they require in addition to the Board of Commissioners sitting as the agency, they will require an advisory committee be established. There's just no getting around that. That will be part of their delegation of authority. They will require us to, if they follow suit with what they've done for the last several years, they'll require it for any new CRA. And I would expect that if we try to extend the timeline of the existing downtown CRA, that they will require it to be an advisory committee for that CRA as well, as probably as a condition of extending the time on the existing CRA.
Okay, so your comment here is that this is already covered by Pinellas County rules?
I believe it is, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions for Renee? No. Go ahead, John.
Well,
it
not
looked
on
like
this, not on this subject, maybe some of the others that she was going to talk.
Okay,
that
well,
we
we're
asked.
on the subject now till we
I'm
close
good.
it out.
I understood how it works, I'm good.
I'm sorry?
I said I understood how it worked, I'm good.
Okay. All right, no more questions on this? Okay. Then the second area we were asking you to come and talk about is you had shared with us your thoughts on building heights. You've been doing a lot of work with your comprehensive plan. Your comment was, well, you have building height restrictions throughout the city. You just don't have a map of that at this point, or an overlay, so to speak. And can you explain the restrictions in the regions where they are?
Well, okay, before we take a deep dive on this, I want to defer to the city attorney. I just handed him a bit ago the chapter 163.3167, which had some specific changes that just went into effect in 2023. And it specifically, and this is what was added in 2023, an initiative or referendum process in regard to any land development regulation is prohibited. And there's other things that talks about that as well. I'm going to defer to Mr. Salzman as to whether or not we can even go down this path at this point.
Go ahead, but I have questions for Renee, though, before you answer the question. One of the things that we were going to look at was an overlay of the city as to the current height restrictions on the comprehensive land use, because I think when we were doing the comprehensive land use, we looked at certain areas of the city that would be more favorable to a height variance or higher floors than other parts of the city, and I think you had an overlay, or you're gonna give us an overlay as to what the height requirements are in those various sections. Obviously, we know 19 would have a higher.
So, okay, but are you still talking about in reference to a charter question here, or a referendum initiative?
Well,
Because
here's the thing.
we're going to be coming back and doing land development
but here-
regulations after the comp plan is adopted.
But here's the thing. So, for example, my recommendation is that it not be in the charter. My recommendation is that should be done by ordinance, that it requires a supermajority of the commission to vote to increase height limitations. And I think I think you thought that was not a bad idea, as opposed to just putting it in the charter.
And whether that is, so I don't think you can put, I'm going to defer to the attorney. I don't think you can have a charter question around establishing anything. Like, if you want to do that supermajority,
That's an ordinance.
that's but I don't think that you can make that a charter referendum question that it should be a supermajority.
No,
That's
we
my-
have,
okay.
Right now, Renee,
Yeah.
we're just asking you
Sure.
questions. We have already discussed whether or not it should be a section in the charter versus an ordinance. We are putting together a list of recommendations for the.
Outside the charter.
Outside the charter, so let's not get tied up
I
in
think,
that. But
I mean,
just answer our questions.
outside of the charter, I mean, we have zoning heights established for every square inch of the city. We have the special area plan and the smart code that is further broken down by area. If you're on Tarpon Avenue, if you're on North Pinellas, if you're on the docks. all of those things, and that was established through a pretty extensive planning process back in 2011, 2013. It's been further amended since then. I mean, if you're going to start, further reducing heights, it's calibrated now based on where they are. There's not one universal height limit across the city. It just doesn't exist. So, anything that we're going to do is going to have to be in a public process and a public forum. I'm not exactly sure what else I can say about it at this point.
Well, at this point, would you consider commenting on our thoughts with regards to requiring height variances approved by the Board of Adjustment to also require a supermajority approval for the Board of Commissioners? Is that?
That's where you have site plans that go to the Board of Commissioners that could also potentially have a variance process for height or anything for that matter. I know under Pinellas County regulations, they grant that power to the Board of Commissioners to review those. They can grant a variance as part of a site plan process, so that you get away from that conflict between two boards. I think that's something that's probably worthy of considering. What the vote needs to be.
So in other words, take the approval of the height variance from the Board of
in certain specific instances.
And what would those be?
If a site plan has to be approved by if a site plan has to be approved by the Board of Adjustments, if it's a plan that's going through that process, then I think to remove the conflict between what the Board of Adjustments might do and what the Board of Commissioners might want, you can specify that it goes to the Board of Commissioners and they can grant that variance. I think the Board of Commissioners may also have the ability to say, we're going to defer that to the Board of Adjustments. I mean, I don't know if there's just a clean break here. We have in the plan development regulations, the Board of Commissioners can waive certain design criteria, so it's that, that's another process. So, I mean, I'm not, there's not a clean way to, we can look at this as we go through all the land development regulations, which is going to be starting very soon. That's the next thing after the comp plan. The special area plan is its own unique process and smart code. I think that's been well calibrated, and it's actually been further reduced in 2022. They took that down and basically said, you have absolutes, and then in a certain couple of districts, you can get one additional story by conditional use, which is the Board of Commissioners. So the Board of Commissioners has control over height, for the most part, and in the smart code, although, I think Board of Adjustments could also weigh in in certain instances, but I don't know, if you've seen it sliced and diced any other way. I mean, I said Pinellas County, they don't take the power away from the Board of Adjustments. They just give it also to the Board of Commissioners when they're reviewing a site plan. To be able to, if it's something that's going to the Board of Commissioners. I want to say with the county, that's a very small bit of stuff. Most of that is handled by their Development Review Committee. So I don't know if that answered anything or just muddied up the water for you.
Does anybody have comments or questions for Renee? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, Renee, I think part of the problem is a lot of people,
The microphone on?
a lot of people didn't understand that there is every piece of property in town has a height limitation on it or guidelines.
Does.
Depending on whether it's commercial or residential. And the other thing is we're talking about height. This is to everybody. We're talking about height in a vacuum. And the height has to be tied into FARs, ISRs, density, things like that, because under certain circumstances, you could give somebody a little extra height for them to create a bunch more green space. And so I think, did we decide we're not going to put it in the charter, the height thing? We're
right
going to do an ordinance?
Right now, we were discussing, we have not just made that
We
decision.
haven't made a decision.
But
So-
I've been working on recommendations for the Board of
Okay.
Commissioners in terms of an ordinance for that.
But we haven't made a firm decision on putting in a chart. Mike, you thought it was going to be an ordinance? Is that what you're saying?
I thought it didn't belong in a charter. I thought if you put restrictions, significant restrictions on the ability to deviate from the height requirements, it could be done by ordinance and not by
Like,
charter.
Okay, so, and that's that's what I'm feeling, is that it's too complex to, an issue. The height is tied to too many things to just have this thing. And it's like Renee said when she first started, and everybody in here everybody in here has been involved in it one way or another, these comprehensive plans and these public hearings and the special area plan and all kinds of things. So it's,
What,
I hesitate to just totally take out any flexibility for future generations, future commissioners to work with. So I'm more leaning towards the
one,
documents of the comprehensive plan and the zoning and,
you know, if,
Let's hear from Mike first.
okay,
Go ahead.
sorry.
I think, obviously, it's, things that we discuss as recommendations for the city commission to adopt as ordinance. Okay, whether they adopt it or not, that's on them. But from public comment and everything the information I've gathered, people in this community want to see some height restrictions, okay? And you don't want to take it away from your Board of Commissioners because I think it's under their purview. I think it may be simpler that instead of a Board of Adjustment, like you said, if it's a site plan, that those things probably need to be approved by the Board of Commissioners and not necessarily the Board of Adjustment. So I think the process may be able to be simplified. I don't know. That's your job to figure that out. But there may be compelling reasons, as John may have indicated, that you may want to deviate from what the height requirements are. Maybe provided green space, so you let somebody go a little bit higher, whatever the case may be. But that compelling reason, if it's that compelling, the recommendation that we've discussed is that it be by supermajority of the commission. Okay, and that's your check and balance that I think satisfies the community with regard to their wish to have limitations on height requirements. And I'd even go as far as saying that ordinance, to change that ordinance, would require a supermajority of the commissioners to change the ordinance. Because otherwise, if you have a supermajority for an ordinance and then they decide to change the ordinance just by a majority, you're going back to square one. So I would even take it as far as requiring a supermajority to change that particular ordinance. And that kind of locks in the restrictions on anybody just being able to having a majority or whatever. And I think that would satisfy the residents of this community. It puts the onus back to the commissioners where it probably should be, and avoids having to make that a charter amendment. Did I say that clear?
That's correct. That's how I understand it.
Okay, but I added having a supermajority to change ordinance.
What's
It's
the
here,
supermajority?
supermajority.
4 out of 5.
I know what a supermajority is. What's the supermajority to act on? What actions would you require a supermajority?
To increase
Height
height
variance.
variance.
Over 1 story, 2 stories,
Whatever
many
they,
stories?
whatever the
Correct,
comprehensive
whatever it
plan
is.
says that they are.
But I think what he's saying is that anything that would normally have required a variance to go to the Board of Adjustments to increase height,
Go to
you
the
know,
DOC.
if it's a site plan that would also have to go to the Board of Commissioners, that the Board of Commissioners would have that authority, but it would have to be a supermajority vote to, and candidly, once you open that up, you might end up having that apply to a lot of things, but, hopefully we can kind of put our arms around it and limit it to height.
And does that get around the state law?
That you're completely outside of the charter at that point. So yes, I think that's purely a local policy decision of of the Board of Commissioners.
I could go with that.
But that's just a recommendation we'd be making, that's all.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, my
Jerry?
concern the whole time was just to provide a little higher level to have to get by to make really sure that there really are compelling reasons
Sure.
for doing one, and I think this does it, and I would agree it's not really a charter.
Well, and you do have hardship criteria in the board, under the Board of Adjustments, so that you have to have a compelling reason whether you're going to the Board of Adjustments, but we need to carry that over to, if we're gonna make that switch, but the Board of Commissioners for a site plan, we wanna have that hardship criteria in place, that there's some compelling reason, so.
I want to recognize Tina.
I agree with John that things are complicated, but I don't agree that people don't know that there are necessarily height restrictions. I think they do, but they want to. But everyone I've talked to, or have heard from, one way or the other, wants to make sure that we do not overdevelop the city, and wants to have some kind of really major restrictions in place. Now, if this can work. Now, from what I've seen, it can be in the charter, but it doesn't have to be in the charter, So if we can make this as stringent as Mike had suggested with the supermajority, maybe that is the way to go. But I do have a couple questions, and I'm relying on the fact that I know you know so much. But can you tell us, just for instance, for the downtown historic district, what is the current restriction on height? What is the current restriction for the sponge docks? What is the current restriction for that historic area that's part of
It
the-
varies by where, it doesn't follow the historic district lines.
No?
No, so when we calibrated the SMART code, we were looking at more fine-grained areas. So, so you've got, like Tarpon Avenue, for instance, is 2 to 3.
Okay.
Because that's what's when you get outside, some areas are only 2. Along North Pinellas, you've got one area in South Pinellas where the Manatee Village Shopping Center is. That whole thing actually allows 5. So it's calibrated to where, based on compatibility and the surrounding area. That was all put into place when that was originally adopted. At the docks, again, that's part of the SMART code area. Generally speaking, most of the docks is 3-story maximum. And a 4th floor by conditional use, I think. But I think that we just amended that code a year and a half or so ago and brought that down to remove any confusion. So, the vast majority of the docks is 3-story, although right along the waterfront, it's actually 2-story.
And what about the residential area of Greektown and the residential area, that's the Fruit Bowl area?
That is, neither one of those areas are in the SMART code area.
So
they're generally R60. They're generally a 1 and 2 family residential at 30 feet, I think.
Okay.
I think R60 is 30 feet off the top of my head. So
But-
it's definitely less.
But when we amend, these upcoming land codes and so
We'll
on.
have to look at that. I mean,
We can.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, when we're looking if we're going to expand the SMART code, if we take those areas in, we will look at what is the compatible height in the area. It might only be 2-story. I mean, that's generally what you have around there. So
Right.
yeah, all that that needs to be taken into consideration.
Do we have any further questions? Yes, John?
But Renee, isn't the downtown, the Tarpon Avenue, regulated more by the FAR than it is the height?
It's both.
Yeah.
It's
so-
both. It's
so
by
I know
story.
It's got compatibility issues too.
It has compatibility. You have FAR. You have ISR. Yeah, so you've got a lot of things to have to deal with. It's not just height.
Any other questions for Renee while she's here? No, I think you did a great job. Thank you very much for
You're
coming
welcome.
and
Hopefully I
answering
didn't
my
muddy up things.
questions.
I wish we would have kind of tuned into the whole restriction in the state statute a little sooner, and I apologize for that, but, you know, we're.
No apologies. You came,
So-
you gave us our information.
old
We're
was that,
grateful
Renee?
of that.
The piece on, about land development regulation was just put in 2023. So,
Pretty new.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask for an amendment to the agenda so that we can go ahead and discuss our remaining charter revision items, since that's not on our agenda today. So may I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Yep, second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, so let's move on and talk about the remaining charter sections. So for Section 8 on the CRA board, we've received our input from Renee. I think that we are going to, my recommendation is to no action, this suggestion, to add citizens. We don't have an ability to do so. And if an additional CRA is put into place, then the county requires an advisory board. So I don't think we have a charter action for this.
I agree.
You do.
I agree.
You
I agree with you.
Okay, I'd like a motion for non-action on that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Actually, yeah,
Right.
roll call.
Dr. Gavales?
Yes for non-action.
Ms. Jennings?
No action,
Can you make a negative motion?
to accept and no action on it, yeah.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Kaskoudas?
Yes, as to the neg, yes, you're not putting it.
Not putting it in.
Okay. Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes?
Vice Chair Julianis?
Yes.
Chair Root?
Yes, okay, moving on. I am going to jump to the section 22 on possible building height sections. We have, I've added a summary to the recommendations of the Board of Commissioners to adopt an ordinance for building height restrictions, require height variances approved by Board of Adjustment to also require a supermajority approval for Board of Commissioners. Is that language correct? And is that where we want to go?
The only caveat I would add to that is because the commission, the Board of Commissioners can change an ordinance by majority, they can vote to do away with the supermajority. So I would add that the recommendation would be, if this ordinance is adopted, that any change of this ordinance would also require a supermajority of the commissioners. That make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Mike, you still, do we need this overlay map? Because it's all.
No, that's one of the things that,
Plan.
yeah, that's what, Renee had said that one time she was gonna give us the overlay so we could see the height, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and so there's height
I don't
restrictions
recall
in
her
place.
promising us that overlay.
Well, I think she
I-
said she'd give us a side.
Well,
would
she
give
was
us a-
working on it, but
Okay.
I don't think she.
That's fine,
it's
I
in her
don't think it's
time.
necessary, but,
So
you
the
know,
rest of it's okay, Mike.
Okay.
Take that part out, and then we do the thing with the supermajority, and it takes a supermajority to change the ordinance.
Yes.
End of
Okay, yeah,
discussion.
I've added those words.
and that
So-
way the board, the commissioners are sort of maybe handcuffed to being able to do anything outside of a compelling reason.
Do we have any other changes we want to see to that? Are we gonna,
Are we putting this in the charter?
No.
no, this is for
we're allowing-
recommendation of the Board of Commissioners.
I thought that's where we were.
So any Board of Commissioners that are watching, that's for you.
That's coming at you. Okay. So we had discussed taking section 22, which is a reserved section. Can I have a motion to accept no changes to section 22?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Michelle, would you call
Yeah,
the
just give me
vote
one
on that?
second here. Dr. Buckavallis?
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kaskoudas?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Chair Colianis?
Yes.
Chair White?
Yes. Okay, our favorite topic, ecological sustainability. So I had comments on two different sections, so I apologize that under my notes here, it only talks about, oh no, I'm sorry, I did include it, to appoint a sustainability, and we called it a commission last time as opposed to committee, and adopt a plan, include control of non-invasive species, and have the plan tied to the budget with direct accountability, vice it being distributed across departments. And the city attorney was going to provide us words for us to consider, and here they are. So have you seen your paragraph? Have you had a chance to read it?
Yes.
But I didn't include the committee, and I didn't include the language on the budget. So we have to add that.
I actually wrote some stuff down.
You want to share?
Yeah. What you put in there was fine, but at the last sentence, I would put that the city shall allocate adequate resources to implement the plan. Okay? But this doesn't mention a committee, so,
Madam Chair? I think
I would love to be able to do 5 things at once. I'm challenged at one at a time. 2 is
Yeah.
beyond it.
at one time, we talked about just putting that we would have a sustainability committee and we would have a sustainability plan and not get too mucked up with and too detailed in what the plan should say. And I'm still of that opinion myself,
Okay.
that we need the sustainability committee, we need the sustainability plan. But Mike, you want to take out Brazilian peppers? I want to plant oak trees. What do you want to plant? Palm trees? I mean, we can't put,
I want to go to no lawns and native Florida
we can't
weeds.
put everything, in. So what I'm saying is the plan is developed by the committee, adopted by the board, and they, and actually, we have members of the public who are in charge of the committee saying, don't put anything in the charter. But, I think there's enough groundswell of public opinion that thinks that sustainability is important. I would like to believe that anybody who's elected as a public official has that built in, but it maybe not. So I think we should say that we have a sustainability committee and we have a sustainability plan, and that's in the charter. And then what the BOC and the committee do with it, as far as fleshing it out, is and the public at large attending meetings and saying, this is what's important to us. This is what we want.
I'd like to
Okay, hold on, wait a minute.
Respond.
Hold on. So if I understand you correctly, you would like to keep the first sentence of the attorney's statement and add in the committee part.
Yeah, add in
Okay.
that we have a committee that has the
Right.
plan, right?
You would add the committee.
And
All
then
right.
take out the rest of the
I'm
stuff.
going to poll everyone, okay, so you get a chance. Merle, would you like to weigh in?
From the perspective of the charter, the broader brush strokes may be good, but I do feel the non-native invasive vegetation and stuff has become a really important issue. So if we don't find a way to address that in the charter itself, I think it needs to be a strongly worded part of our recommendations, at least, to the BOC.
It's in the adopted plan already. And that was written to us by the people in charge of the plan. They told us that's already in the plan.
No, it's,
Well, wait a minute. We are surveying, so I'm going to
Okay.
ask you to be patient and let people have their say without jumping on them, okay?
So,
Mike.
so you have a plan, all right, but a plan is just a plan. And there's implementation of a plan. And you could have a plan all day long, John, but if you don't implement it, there's no plan. So obviously, this is one I've been pretty adamant about, and so so by adding the fact that the city has a plan, by providing, and this is a pretty broad stroke. I'm not saying you have to allocate, because if you go back, there's a reason why you put the sidewalk criteria in the charter, because they had a plan for sidewalk repair, but they weren't doing anything.
No, they didn't have a plan.
Well, but they could have had a plan.
They could have, but
They could, but even if they had a plan, nothing was being done, and you forced them to have to do something, okay? So, and by painting this with a broad stroke, by saying that the city will allocate adequate resources to implement the plan. And that puts the onus on them to determine what adequate resources are. Okay, I'm not telling them how much they have to allocate for a plan. It's just providing the resources necessary as they have the resources to address their sustainability plan. And other than that, I think the language, besides having a committee, I think the language is fine. But as y'all mandated that the city budget money for sidewalks, I'm saying the city needs to look at budgeting, whatever they decide, whatever they think is adequate, and that's subjective, to do something. Because currently, there's almost like a tug of war. No department wants to allocate their dollars to doing something out of their budget with regard to and specifically removing invasive species. Nobody wants to allocate it out of their budget. So this kind of forces the commissioners and the city manager, because now he's got to look at this as, okay, what are we going to put aside to look at this? That's why I think it's important, because I think if you just don't put something in there that requires them to do something, this could be overlooked, and it's in the charter, but no one pays attention to it. That's just my opinion.
Mike, your language.
Oh, stop.
Oh,
You'll
sorry.
have a chance. We're polling everyone,
Okay.
not just every other time back to John. All right, I am going to come to you next to last, okay?
That's
Because
fine.
you're vice chair. Tina, would you like to weigh in?
Well, I think it's good to put this in.
Can you speak into your microphone?
Yes.
And is it,
I-
yeah, sorry.
I do think we should have a sentence about allocating adequate resources. Again, having read the memos that were given to us by Feiger and Menino, pointing out that they already have about the invasive species as part of their plan. I could leave in this sentence about that or take it out. I could go either way. I don't think it's necessary, but if everyone wants to leave it in, that's fine. But definitely the stuff about allocating resources.
Joan?
Well, I think I'm going to defer to Denise Menino's memo. And to read it, it says, Mr. Kiger, Director of Public Services, explained, there is no need to include the Sustainability Advisory Committee in the city charter in order to, quote, give it more teeth. Most elements of the sustainability plan have been integrated nicely into the comprehensive plan and will be included in the land development code. The action steps requiring removal of invasive species were also clearly explained by Mr. Kiger. To consider, well, anyway, if they're being ignored now by the comprehensive plan, and the ordinance, would make putting it in the charter affect that at all? To allocate sufficient funds? Should that be an ordinance issue rather than a charter issue?
When I didn't say funds, I said resources.
Okay. But again, could that be incorporated into the ordinance rather than into the charter? That's the only thing I'm asking.
Okay, that's a good question. We're polling now, so we'll have discussion in a minute. Vice Chair?
I also read that letter from two different people there. My problem is I don't think we should put everything that's a problem in the city in the charter, okay? And I know you talked to Public Works people, and they said, nobody wants to take money out of their share of the budget. That's a city manager problem. If he understands, and you just can't say, I got all these roads to fix, I can't take money out of there, cut weeds down. Yeah, you can. That's what a government does. That's how you spend your money. You get everything you want at home? No. You get what you can afford. I just don't like all of this in the charter. We found out, me especially, because I love the idea that we're going to make them put sidewalks down. Ha. This isn't going to make them cut woods down. I don't care if you give them every name of every invasive species, it doesn't mean they're going to cut it down. It has to come from the top, guys. I'll support anything y'all decide. I don't have a problem with what I've heard. I just don't think it belongs in the charter. I really don't.
I am going to share my opinion. I tend to keep my opinions on the quiet side, but I think this is a really important issue. I think sustainability has become an important issue, and I think it's going to become an even more important issue. And I think that by including it in the charter, we show a vision of the future that needs to be addressed. And sustainability incorporates a whole lot more than just invasive species. And I think that, I know we've had a hot spot with invasive species, but there's so much more to it. We've got rising water, we've got all kinds of things that are going to be impacting our city going forward. And I really think it's time to address it and make it the third plan that's in the charter. We are following precedents by giving this plan weight by including it in the charter. That's what we are doing. We are saying it is important, okay? The second thing is we don't have really committees addressed in the other charter, aside from P&Z and the Board of Adjustments, but those are boards, not committees. And we've decided to make the Marine Commerce Committee a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners as opposed to calling it out as a charter section. So I'm on the fence with that part of it. I am very hard over for giving whatever we put in there a statement with regards to allocating resources to the plan, to implementing the plan, and making sure there's a mechanism for direct accountability, because that's a problem that has already been identified. We have a precedent for solving the city's problems where we're concerned that it hasn't been done adequately. Now, you can point to the sidewalk as that. We're not going to make it a section on its own. We're going to add it to the duties of the Board of Commissioners to maintain the city of Tarpon Springs and look forward to some of the hard decisions that are going to have to be made. The other thing is, I think that what we want the sustainability plan and the city's actions to do is more than just looking at eliminating non-invasive species for landscaping development and redevelopment. We need to go today and clean up what we got. And, I'd like to see some focus on that as well. That's my opinion. So, I know Mr. Terrapini's been waiting patiently to make comments, so floor is yours.
Well, it's a relatively new concept. So some of the things, Joan, I don't think we should say the city staff hasn't taken out anything or taken any action to remove invasive species. I mean, I've seen them do a little bit, but, you know, the whole concept of the ordinance, the committee, you know, in the history of the town, I would say it's very new, relatively new. So, I mean, I heard everybody, and I appreciate it. I heard Mike's comments, but Carrie, I agree with you that the sustainability has cream floats to the top, and the sustainability has come to the top in people's minds and what they want to see addressed in a community, as much as sidewalks and streets and
Building
police and
heights
fire
and-
and
yeah.
building heights. So I'm going to stick with my original position, which is we should say that the city shall have a sustainability committee and the city shall adopt a sustainability plan, but not micromanage the plan contents in the charter and what they're supposed to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other
I-
comments back? Mike, of course.
When it talks about allocating resources, it doesn't mean spending money. There's personnel within the city. They could allocate personnel.
That's money.
No, if you're already paying somebody to do something, it does, you have them, you know, you are paying them. So you're not costing you more money. You're just allocating them differently, one. Two, I think, as Carrie said, this is important. And at the end of the day, it's for the voters to decide whether or not this is something that they want to adopt, okay? And so by requiring, you know, putting this language in, asking that the city allocate adequate resources, I think the voters will decide whether or not how important this is to them, and not necessarily us. And so, you know, I don't want to foreclose the residents or the citizens voting on this to say, okay, we want this, but we just don't want it in language. We want to see it implemented. And what better way to implement it is to require the city, like y'all did the sidewalks, to be able to provide the resources to accomplish it. And at the end of the day, you know, I think the citizens, and I've heard, believe it or not, I've heard from several people in the city when I brushed this up and they said, look, this is what, you know, I thought of, you know, that we thought of, and one of the things we're discussing, and they thought it was a great idea. They really did. You know, and that's not coming from the director, but that's coming from boots on the ground within the city. And so, you know, that tells me it was going the right direction.
You know, we can come to maybe a compromise on this and ask for the sustainability plan and the committee to go into the charter and then follow up with recommendations to the Board of Commissioners for allocating resources to implement plan and address accountability.
That's fine. That's fine. I just think it needs to be addressed, and I think if they ignore that recommendation, then that tells you that it wasn't important on their part. I just wanted to see that it got the same attention that the previous charter review did with the sidewalks.
I have to tell you, though, for the sustainability of my eyesight, I need you to keep your feet under the desk. Okay.
Those of you at home?
Okay, what I'm going to recommend is a motion to adopt the first sentence of the attorney's language, modified to add the Sustainability Committee.
Can we-
Can
Yes.
we ask a question for clarification? So on 624, it says Sustainability Committee, and it says BOC to appoint Sustainability Committee to develop and maintain a sustainability plan and recommend changes and updates to the BOC. That was voted on June
But
24th.
we found out they already have a plan, Michelle.
Okay, so that's,
They already we didn't know at the time that they had actually gone through with the
They had a
adoption.
plan, right.
Yeah, that's why that's,
Is there, can I finish my request for motion, and then we'll go into discussion, okay? So, I'd like the motion, as I stated, adopt the first sentence of what the attorney wrote with the addition of the establishing a sustainability committee. And, you know, Mr. Salzman will give the appropriate words that we'll have a chance to approve when it comes back. And in companion with that, adding any further recommendations we want to add to our recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. Can I get a motion for that?
So move.
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I think your idea of the compromise is good. I think we could actually capture it all in the charter if we just said that the city would maintain or appoint and maintain a sustainability committee and adopt, implement, and provide the resources to, what were your language, Mike? Provide the resources to.
Adequate resources.
Provide adequate resources, period, to implement the plan, period.
Allocate that.
Allocate, okay, resources. And then that keeps us from having to recommend to the BOC. We just get it all in and I think it cuts down on the rub with the
Okay.
existing sustainability committee.
Are you saying not have that in the charter?
No, I'm saying to put what I just said in the charter.
Okay.
Yes, he's,
All right. All right.
okay, so
Can I just,
let's close out the current motion and go on with a different motion, because I think it's too complicated to amend.
right, can I read the language and see if this works?
Okay,
The city of Tarpon Springs shall maintain a sustainability plan and committee which shall provide for the improvement and maintenance of the environmental, social, and economic vitality of the city of Tarpon Springs and allocate adequate resources to implement the plan.
yep, that sounds great.
I can live with that.
Period.
Can, who,
Just one question.
Vice, wait a minute. Vice Chair, do you agree with
Yes.
the change? Do
Yes.
you amend your motion?
Yes.
The second, who seconded it?
This is Jenny.
Me.
You did. Do you agree with the modification? And then we'll have a further discussion.
Yeah, just a quick semantic question. Adequate funds or sufficient funds, or does it matter?
It's not funds, resources.
Resources
sorry.
and allocate.
Adequate resources.
I mean, we could say, the city commission shall allocate adequate resources to
Adequate,
implement the
okay.
plan.
Do you accept the change to the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion? I'm in, hold on. Michelle, would you call a vote?
Dr. Booth
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kuskudis?
I would have liked to add invasive species, but I'd say yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Chair Colianis?
Yes.
Chair Root?
Yes. And that will go in section 8 with the other plans, okay.
But I thought it was going in 21.
Good work.
No, that, last time we were talking about it was going to go as a paragraph in section 8. Let's open that up. My recommendation is that this be added to the appropriate section in section 8 as opposed to a new section of 21. Are you all right with that, or does this need to be its own section?
Section 8's the
Section
first
8. Yeah, I agree. Any, Ellen, agree with that?
I'm just looking at my notes here.
That's where the other plans
Yeah,
are
it's R.
discussed.
Supposed to be
R.
8R.
Well, we're already renumbering those.
Right, that would be the renumber, or the relettering.
No, because we're already doing it up here, because we
Right.
added something here.
Right.
So I think we should make it. Can it be added to follow the paragraph on the strategic plan? So it goes
Add it
comprehensive.
wherever you
Yeah,
want it.
I think that's where we need to add it.
Okay.
And it's all, that whole section's being renumbered anyway. Do we need a vote on where we put it? No, okay.
That's just something that we'll do as housekeeping when we present it to you.
Well, you know, I'm hard over on having it be in the right place with the right title. So,
Well, no, we'll put it there, but if.
Thank you.
If for some reason you don't like where we put it, you can just move it.
okay. I'd like it following the other two plans. Okay, so, oh, I'm sorry, I promised John we'd start early. I want to open a discussion on eminent domain. We have already voted on this, but John said there is new data, so I will ask him to explain to us why we need to reconsider and what he has found out.
Okay, so the new data is that the city has entered into a contract to buy a piece of property. But let me just digress for a minute. The city has the right of eminent domain on any legal use. They could eminent domain spoil sites without any change to the charter. Okay, so, but the fact that the city now has a contract on a piece of property to buy, and it's going to a public referendum for the citizens to bless, to me, if you make this charter change, you're setting up the potential for the Board of Commissioners to circumvent the will of the people. And that is, if the charter failed and then they used eminent domain, I don't care if they use eminent domain, as long as it goes back to the people. But the change that you're making in the charter is that the city commission can use eminent domain for a spoil site without a referendum. But now that there's a contract on a piece of property, and if that fails and the commission comes back and uses eminent domain, that's a circumvention of the will of the people, and you'll be complicit in that, allowing them to do that.
Okay, I'm going to say I disagree with you. I can't
fine.
find the section on eminent domain right now as I'm flailing through my sticky notes. If anybody knows where it is there. Which one?
3B.
B, as in beta?
Yes.
3, oh, that's right, I'm looking on the wrong one, that's it, okay. So, I read this paragraph, not that it circumvents going for a referendum for purchase. I read this as the city can use eminent domain to acquire property for the, water, sewer, utility easement, public rights-of-way, public parking, and storm drainage improvements. And we're adding dredge and spoil sites to that.
Those are without referendum.
Let me finish. But if the cost of those goes over currently $350,000, then they would still have to go out for referendum.
I don't
no?
think you're reading it correctly.
I don't think legally, and the attorney would say this, to the extent that the city has to go out for eminent domain, that follows under the purview of the commission, period.
Right.
Regardless of what the dollar amount is, that's the purview of the commission. So you can't restrict the cost of eminent domain.
You can't restrict the cost for eminent domain because it's a separate court
Okay.
that determines the value of the property.
All right, I was not aware of that. All right, well, that's fine. So,
So,
Actually, a jury.
so that's the objection,
Okay.
Chairman, that they're being able to use, I don't care if they use eminent domain to buy a spoil site, if the city needs a spoil site, but the fact that we have a contract on the property and the voters turn it down, and then if this is in there and they circumvent the will of the voters, I got a real problem with that.
Well, from a legal perspective, let me ask counsel, even if they wanted to circumvent the will of the people, that's still within their constitutional right. So you can't, John, it is.
No, well, look, I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just saying I don't want to set it up to make that possible. What I'm saying is if the,
Currently, it's possible.
It's
Possible.
no matter what you do in the charter,
right.
it's
then-
possible.
Then why, if they have that right, then why add it? If they have that right now, why add it?
You don't have to.
Because I checked with Mr. Salzman, I said, can they condemn a spoil site? He goes, yeah.
well, it looks to me like in this charter, we're limiting their rights to use eminent domain to only those areas.
But you can't. You can't limit it. You can't limit eminent domain.
Then we should look at removing that paragraph if
I think
it's
it's
not
any lawful
effective.
purpose.
I think you leave the paragraph in place.
What?
Yeah, but
Yeah, Mr. Salzman's wording for any legal purpose.
So we have voted to add dredge and spoil sites to the list under 3B.
And you've added, didn't we add also the reasons for the eminent domain?
Well, that's kind of 3B, isn't it?
No, we didn't add the reasons for
I thought we
eminent.
had that.
Oh, no, you made it so they can use eminent domain for a spoil site.
Right, but I thought we added and provide reasons for eminent domain. We did not put that in there? Did we not?
I think what we did is, if you look at the four corners of that sentence.
Right.
Okay, they can only use it for water, sewer, utilities, and public right-of-way. We wanted to add spoil sites.
Right.
So they have that authority in eminent domain for spoil sites, and that way it goes beyond the four corners of that paragraph.
Okay, I
Does that
just
make
want to make
sense?
sure, because I had this additional language in there.
Does that make sense what I said?
Yeah, and that's the way, historically, that's the way it's been, and that's why this is small in the number of things they put in there.
Right.
You have to have these all the time, and he gives the city the go-ahead, take them.
Look, I
was right.
understand the water, the sewer,
did
the
do it.
streets, the right-of-way, I understand all of that.
We've
Yeah.
added.
I just-
spoil.
We
My
added spoil
problem-
sites, so they're not limited to just.
I understand that that's what you added, Mike. What I'm saying is, just me personally, I just don't think it's appropriate to have a referendum and then set it up for the commission to be able to circumvent the referendum and circumvent the will of the people. That's just me. I wouldn't add it myself.
Well, they could have done it by eminent domain.
Yes.
They could have, without, but they, I guess they are choosing to go to referendum on this, but they could have done it by eminent domain regardless.
The only time they're really going to go for eminent domain is if there's a real need and we cannot negotiate something to get it. I mean, eminent
understand
domain,
that.
like you know, there's got to be a city reason for that, a need for that, a specific need. Because you're actually taking away the ability to determine the value of the property. That's determined by a third party and actually can be a jury question with 12 jurors. So you wouldn't do that unless you absolutely had to, because you're losing out on the ability to control the costs. And those would be almost it's an emergency situation where you need this property, otherwise you don't have drainage or whatever.
So how does it sit right now?
Right
We've
now-
added eminent domain, we've added a spoil site to that.
Yeah, dredge and spoil sites.
We have an eminent domain in the charter already.
right,
We've
but-
added spoil sites and reasons for eminent domain.
Well, again, I think the charter is a direction that they're trying to say. There are certain things in charters that may not be able to be enforced on changes of situations that you're not anticipating.
Now-
And that's always true of, in any charter.
As it sits right now, without mentioning dredge and spoil sites, though, under state law, the city actually really has the right to eminent domain for spoil sites anyways, don't they?
Yes.
So it doesn't need to be in here.
But you're trying to put together language that is giving direction to the commission. These are the only reasons we want you to do it.
Right.
So I think a strong argument can be made by commissioners. If somebody says, hey, let's do X, Y, and Z, no, the charter limits what we can do. This is not a situation where it's an absolute emergency that we have to do this. Right. So there's nothing wrong with if you want to add that language. And you did vote to say that part of that will also be explaining the reasons for that eminent domain action.
Right, and I look at it from a different perspective. We can go out to the citizens. They can approve the referendum for the spoil site. And the property owners can say, you know what? We've changed our mind. We want more. Or we decided not to sell.
We have a contract with them.
Yeah, it's a breach of contract.
They can still do it.
Well, it's
And this-
specific performance.
Right.
It's just a personal thing with me, that we're expanding it when we've got a referendum, and it's just, what you're doing is you're just allowing the commission to say, we can use eminent domain for spoil, when before they weren't allowed to do it. I'm all for spoil sites. I think we should have one. I don't know that enough critical analytical analysis was done on this, but I'm for a spoil site. But I'm just not for circumventing the will of the
Okay,
public.
and just as a question, what was the new data you brought
That
forward?
it was not under contract when you voted to do this. So the new data is that the city now has a piece of property with a consensual contract between a buyer and a seller to put this property on a referendum to acquire by the city.
But on
You
the,
didn't have that, you didn't have a contract when this first came up.
yeah, but on the same token, you're talking about, I mean, from a practical standpoint, you're talking about the purchase of a piece of property that if the city was going to go after eminent domain for this amount of money,
They
would
would have
not
done it.
occur unless it was something that was absolutely needed for the city.
Carrie?
Yes.
Question for Mr. Salzman. Given what you've been discussing about the fact that there are really no limitations on eminent domain, does that word exclusively belong in there?
I don't think there's anything wrong with the language that's in there.
Okay.
I think it's giving direction to the commission. I think that there are times when there could be an emergency situation, that something has to be done, that they can look at this and say, okay, this is beyond, yes, it's beyond the scope of the charter, and frankly, honestly, somebody could challenge it based on the fact that you're going beyond the charter. And we could have a court have to make a decision as to what you can do in that situation. But I think this gives direction to the commission.
Right, I guess the word exclusively is what's bothering me.
Well, again, eminent domain is a really, the city's not gonna be getting in the eminent domain business unless it absolutely needs to. It's just not something they're going to do.
Right.
That was the purpose of it, Joan. The exclusively was to say, you guys can use eminent domain, but this is all you're using it for.
Right.
You're not gonna use it for parks, you're not gonna use it for spoil sites, or whatever, or anything, but other than what's said.
Okay, so Mr. Salzman, when you say you think it's good as it is that including the change we voted for?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take a poll of the commission to see if we need any further discussion on this item. Ms. Bugalo?
No, I don't.
You don't think so? Okay,
I'm good with everything.
you're good with it? Mr. Terrapini, we know,
It was a good hill.
what's that?
But you're not
Mr.
dying on it.
Seaman?
I'm okay.
Okay, Mr. Couscous, okay. All right, so no action. Moving on. Okay, we have completed our recommended set of changes, I believe, at this point to the charter. Yes.
I've-
You're gonna take that statement away from me?
One question,
Yes.
and it's okay if y'all tell me no, it won't hurt my feelings or anything, but and I don't know if it's exactly new information, but it didn't pop into my head until Saturday, and when a situation came up. It has to do with perhaps enlarging the potential pool for members to participate in boards and commissions. It would be in Section 8, but if it's too late to discuss it, tell me so.
Well, you said we've allowed discussion if there's new information. Do you have new information? So it's an idea that popped in?
It's something that
I
just
will,
came
I
up.
will get, you okay with it? You approve it? Discussion, approval?
Yep.
That's, I see it, enough nods to go ahead. Merle.
Okay, well, it's very simple, and some of y'all may have a reason that you don't like it, but there, our Section 8 under what is currently J says commissioners may appoint any city residents to serve on one permanent board or committee. what it doesn't address is all the people out there that have a real stake in Tarpon Springs, have businesses here, but don't necessarily live in town, own property in town. Is there a way, and should we consider allowing not just residents, but property owners or business owners or whatever to increase that pool? It came up from a very specific situation where someone that I felt would be a really good position to take my spot on P and Z, and I asked him about it being proactive the other day, and he said, well, I live like 1 block out of Tarpon Springs.
Tell them to move.
Move the line.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so that's the
Good
thought.
answer.
I think that anybody that has quote-unquote skin in the game should be considered. If somebody owns property or a business, sometimes they have more of a stake than just a resident. So,
Well, by resident, we still exclude part-time residents because they're not citizens of the community. From my perspective, well, I'm gonna go ahead, let's see. Where are you on this?
Oh, well, that's tough, because again, you know, it goes back to the issue of people with, and I assume this person had skills that
Yeah.
were very applicable to the committees, and sometimes we have people on committees who aren't as skilled, you know, so, I guess I could go either way. Because I
Well-
think there is a need for, I think there is the need for skills.
oh, Carrie?
I'm gonna, okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, quickly, the organization I used to work for was a business improvement district, and they weighted the power of the board to property and business owners. And I think that, you know, they've made sometimes a larger investment in the community than residents. So, you know, I'm with Merle on this one, strongly.
Okay. Go ahead, Rick.
I'm a little bit mixed. I could see property owner because they have skin in the game. Businesses could be like a revolving door. But at the end of the day, you know, one of the things we have to look at is improving the skill set of those who sit on boards to, and so there are people, a lot of people that are qualified that actually participate in the city who don't, you know, own property to city. But then also, when you look at it, there are people that live in the city, okay, who are residents of the city that could serve on the boards, but they have no skin in the game because they you know, they may be renting down over there at the apartments by Winn-Dixie. Okay, so they could serve on the board, and that's, they're transitory. Okay, so I could see, you know, I don't know if it, you know, I don't know if it's a change of the charter or that's what the charter requires.
There's one
Okay,
specific
okay,
line here that would
okay.
have to change.
So I don't know if that's state mandated that they have to be, but I could see broadening the pool of potential candidates, you know, because just because you're a citizen or resident of Tarpon doesn't mean you bought into the city. And there are people, like you said, that live outside the city who do more in this city or participate more economically and personally than those that actually do live in the city, and giving them the opportunity to be heard on some of the boards. I mean, like you said, may improve the skill set of those that are currently sit. So I could be swayed.
I can't. Yeah. My thing is like Merle's talked to an individual who's a property owner just outside the city, but there's a lot of property in the city that's owned by big corporations. And are those individual corporate members going to be eligible for a committee post? Because those people aren't going to be inclined to hear about sustainability. They're not going to be inclined to hear about limitations on height and fabric of the community type issues. So I'm good with the charter the way it sits.
Vice Chair?
We've talked about never having enough people come out and sit on committees. I'm not sure allowing somebody from out of the city that's going to take care of that problem. I'm really not. I would rather see us figure out some way, if we're going to be going forward, is how do we get the people at Tarpon to come and sit on a board versus bringing somebody from outside in. And he's probably a nice person. Please don't take me wrong. Okay.
Incorporate into the
But
city.
I have to say no.
I have to pipe in on this. Residents, there's a relationship between residents and our elected officials. There's an accountability there. That a property owner who is not a resident does not have that accountability relationship. I don't think that allowing someone who's a non-resident to be part of the board helps us. I don't think that's the way we should go about addressing how we get people on the board. I think there's many other ways to approach it first, before we were to consider something like that. That would be, to my mind, the absolute last-ditch effort, because we give up that very important accountability relationship. There was something else I was going to say about that as well.
Do I hear
Oh,
voices?
I've missed it.
Do you hear voices?
Yes, next door.
Oh.
No, they're in your head.
Oh, that's-
No, what are you talking
What
about?
else is you, what else is you?
What are they telling you to
No,
do?
you don't want to know what they're saying.
That was a good one, Carrie.
I think there's other things we can do. I'm really, the other thing I was going to say is, if you have a property owner or a business owner that has a vested interest and a significant concern to voice, there's other ways to be involved in the city. Our boards are open, our committees are open. They can come and provide public comment. They can reach out and discuss individually with members of the board. There's a lot of ways to influence what happens here without us opening that and consider it a Pandora's box, particularly after what John mentioned about ownership of property by major corporations. I like the way you think out of the box, Merle, but this
But get back in
suggestion
it.
doesn't fly with me.
Like I said, it just popped in my head and I hadn't had really time to think
I-
about it very much.
I think I think it's a good discussion, but I'm going to recommend that we table it.
What about better enforcement of people who are qualified to be on boards?
Well, we have a recommendation for the board that they look at that, so I don't want to open that conversation right now.
Okay.
Are we going to take this farther? Let me poll. No,
I'm good.
you're good? No? No?
Yeah, I just wanted it heard.
Thank you.
You could have been
right.
convincing, but you swayed me. How about
Can I
that?
now say we've finished discussing changes to the charter? Up
Yes.
Until we get our recommendations back from Mr. Salzman? Okay,
Need a motion, also move.
I don't think so. It was just,
Okay.
we never actually even opened it up. We were just heard the comment. Okay, so let's move on. The next thing we need to do is to go over the updated recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. For life of me, I've just now lost that. What did I do with that? All right, so I have a question for the attorney with regards to our recommendations for the Board of Commissioners. We have opted to defer a number of the changes we had discussed to a list of recommendations for the board. If they do not want to action any of those, are there any of them on there that we would go back and consider actioning for a change? It's So that's one question. And the question for the attorney is can we ask for them to let us know what their decision is with regards to our recommendation when they come back with their recommendations for the charter changes as well? You follow me on that?
You can ask them. I mean, that's all you can do, is ask them.
That's all we can do.
You want to borrow mine for now?
Yeah, I'm gonna need to. I don't know where to, might have been.
Use mine.
Yeah, I had written on something on the top of it. But I will, look at, I found it. Okay. All right, so, based on what we had our discussions last time more on building height, I added the first one there on building height restrictions. And then I changed the other language based on your recommendations of last time. So the only, let's see, we had a change suggestion by Mike to the first one that said any change of this ordinance requires a supermajority. And then under revitalize the Marine Commerce Committee, I have the comments on the back that expand that farther.
One of the things I think we also discussed is recommend that the city, that actually come from the police department, have a harbor master. It's not a port authority.
Yes, if you flip the page,
Okay.
we have under scope, number 1, investigate
Oh, I see it.
establishing a
Okay.
harbor master for the Anclet River.
Gotcha. See it?
Okay. I was listening. So I would like a motion to accept these recommendations with the annotation that we made earlier about change of the ordinance for building height restrictions requiring a supermajority. As the set of recommendations we will make to the Board of Commissioners.
Is that the back and the front, or just the back?
It's the back and the front. The Revitalize the Marine Commerce Committee, we went into some detail on what we thought that should look like. And I just put that on the back page so it was complete and of itself. I can put C back page.
No, that's all right. Are you taking comments on the scope? I just wanted to.
Well, I'd like a motion first, and then we can take comment, and
I'll-
then we can do discussion.
I'll make a move that we adopt these recommendations.
Okay.
Second.
And a seconded. All right, let's open for discussion. I'll start with you.
Under scope, where it says that, it's 4 and 5, actually, they're kind of together. So we have 2 boat launching ramps in Tarpon. One launches into the Manatee Migration Zone, which, it's kind of funny, the city changed the rules on Spring Bayou, but they have to run the gauntlet first to get to the safe zone. So it's kind of funny. The other is we launch into the pristine grass flats of St. Joseph's Aquatic Preserve, a state-designated aquatic preserve with pristine grass flats. I think that we should ask them to find additional boat launching ramp spaces and potentially close those 2 or make them non-combustible engine launches for canoes, kayaks, rowboats, whatever. It's just, we talk about sustainable, it's like we're bipolar. We talk about sustainability and stuff, which we rightfully should, but then we're tearing up the grass flats that provide the trout and the redfish and the flounder and everything. And then, they talk about manatee deaths and manatee scarring, and we're launching right into their main
So,
migration route. Sure.
Can I recommend make boat ramps that are in manatee migration areas and grass flats be exclusively for non-motorized craft?
Non-combustible.
Well, I think we have to.
Non-combustion?
Well,
Okay.
before we do that, Carrie, unless you want to get lynched, we have to come up with we have to provide our alternative launching ramps first, and then
Oh, we're getting there.
close it.
Okay,
or
provide
modify it.
trying to think out where we have that land that we could do that, to be honest with you. I mean, you probably know more places
So
than I
provide
do.
alternative boat launch locations and make boat ramps that are in manatee migration areas and grass flats be exclusively
Stouffer site.
for non-combustion engine
On the east,
Watercraft?
watercraft.
Yeah,
that was never polluted.
we may be talking about the same thing. I thought
So
it
you
was
can
on
put a
the west.
battery
The directions get confusing.
bladed motor in.
No, it's combustion.
Non-combustionable electric motors.
Yeah, well, you can have a battery-driven blade that does the same
Well-
amount of damage as a.
Well, electric
gas-
motors, electric motors don't have enough
Power.
to cut anything.
That's about to change. Mercury's coming out with 100 horsepower electric outboards.
Yeah, I don't
As we
think that we
speak.
can assume that that is true.
Could you require one of those cages?
Or
On
could
the
you just say
engine,
If we get the new
non-motorized?
launching ramps, it'd probably take care of it.
Yeah, I think new launching, I kind of like the non-motorized.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think as long as we replace it with something that's badly
You gotta
needed
replace it first.
further out the river, yeah. Yeah, like you say, we'd be lynched otherwise.
Increased number of ramps for motorized watercraft.
Non-motorized watercraft.
Really, that one
No,
little
I
Craig
think
Park
it's
ramp's not
Number of
much
boat
good for
ramps
powered
for
vessels
motorized.
anyway.
So right next to what used to be Flattery's in Marmar, now I guess
Yeah.
Gene Struthers has it.
Yeah, yeah.
The 10 acres right next to it.
And then maybe we'll go to a six, say six, provide
I knew there
trailer
was some
parking
there
areas.
that wasn't, yeah.
That's part of the problem.
That's probably fine, yeah.
Okay, so
Splash park and stuff and put a launching ramp in there.
Yeah.
They spent
I like,
$100,000
those are good suggestions.
to dredge that, and they did dredge it, and then they
Yep.
came along and said, you can't use it.
Okay, it's 3:30 and Mr. Couscous has disappeared, so let's take a 5-minute break, come back at, 3, how about 3:40, we'll go 9 minutes. Michelle, can you share with us what this is?
No,
Just kind of showed up.
I'm sorry, that was, if you would like it, Renee brought it showing the heights of the current areas of the heights allowed, I believe.
So would it be correct to assume, well, it
I
says,
can't answer anything, she just brought that, and
Okay.
if you see on the side, she pointed out on the left-hand side at the bottom, it shows the heights per color for the area.
All right, so those are building, in other words, number of stories is how we should interpret this.
So currently, looking at this, the Manatee Village, at this point, it could go 5 stories.
Yeah.
That's if it were completely torn down and
Yeah.
and rebuilt, because they
Yeah.
just rebuilt it at 2 or 1, you know.
I'm still amazed nothing's gone in there.
I thought they were building it out for a purpose.
Me too.
I think a good person with a color chart could help them.
Okay.
whoa, what is this South Gateway Special District? Wait a minute.
That's Manatee Plaza.
That's Manatee.
No, but look, it's the docks.
Yeah, no, that's SDB, which is 2.
Oh, okay, well, it's,
It's a little bit lighter than the
Okay.
SDA.
Yeah, you have to look at the print in the color.
yeah, you can hardly
Yeah.
even see it.
Yeah, I alerted on that too.
You know, when you go down Florida Avenue, that condo, I can't remember the name of it, on South Florida Avenue, what's that, 5-story?
There's a 5, and there's one that's like 6 or 7
Yeah.
that sits way back, but that's the stuff, there was the whole strip all the way to the end, Mike, was that way, both directions. And it got changed in the 70s. So,
Okay, that's why they never added another building, because they have all that property, added another building.
yeah, that's why it got changed.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's no, she doesn't have anything indicated for our, like the fruit bowl.
It's in green, isn't it? Oh, that's the park.
Right.
Madam Chair, you do have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I know, I was distracted by the data that showed up. All right, let's get back to our discussion on the Marine Commerce Committee as part of the recommendations for the Board of Commissioners. So we've changed 4 to say, provide alternate boat launch locations and make boat ramps that are in manatee migration areas and grass flats be exclusively for non-motorized watercraft.
Yeah.
And 5, increase the number of boat ramps for motorized watercraft. And then add 6, provide trailer parking access.
The grass flats one, Carrie, you could embellish it by saying it's an aquatic preserve, which it is.
Okay. Okay. So that's the second change to this. Are there any other discussion points? No? Okay, let's see, Mike, I believe you made this motion and Merle seconded. Did I get that, or did you make the motion?
I don't think I did.
Oh, Michelle, who made the motion?
Mr. Kuskudis and Mr. Simmons.
Okay, yeah, I think so. Do you accept those changes?
I do.
Merle, do you accept
do.
the changes? All right, is there any further discussion? Michelle, would you call the vote?
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kaskounis?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Chair Foley is out of the room. Chair Whip?
Yes. Okay, well, that's that. So we've finished our work for now. The next things that will happen on this commission is that our city attorney will work all these up into referendum language and language that goes to the Board of Commissioners. And we will have an opportunity to approve that. We spoke last week about having that language available sometime during the week of August 12th, with our next meeting then being August 19th. Is that still a good plan?
Yes.
All right, is that acceptable to the city clerk?
Yes.
Is that acceptable to our commission members?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
So when do we come back on August 12th?
Okay, so that's our first,
That's what she said, yeah.
our future schedule. So our next meeting is August 19th with information coming in the prior week.
Oh.
Okay, and if, all right, so that's that. Now, let's go to board and staff comments. I'll start with city clerk. None, okay. Michelle?
No.
Mr. Salzman?
No comments.
Mr. Terrapini?
It's been a pleasure.
Palanky? No. Mr. Seaman? No comment. Mr. Kuskudis?
I'm going to echo in more words than what John said, that, you know, looking at this committee and looking all the Mondays that we would be meeting, and to see how diligent this group had gone through this charter, and I'm just really, really proud of the work we did so far. Obviously, there's more work to be done, but, you know, that's a testament to our chair to keep us moving forward. And again, job well done. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
I'll second Mike's comments and say that it's been a very collegial atmosphere. We've all got a lot of work done, but in an open, courteous, sometimes humorous way.
And I agree with all of you, and it's also been very educational. So I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, from my perspective, I've done one of these before. I learned a tremendous amount. Being the chair of this, I don't know how else I would have approached this, because my memory is in an Excel spreadsheet. That's how, that's my version of AI personally. So I thank you all for being patient with me as I grew into the role. It took a few weeks. I thank very much the city clerk and the deputy city clerk for supporting us, because we have, you know, this has been a long process, and I really appreciate what you bring to the table. Mr. Salzman, you have been responsive to every one of our requests. I greatly appreciate you on here, and I look forward to seeing what you provide to us going forward.
I can only go downhill, I guess.
And since this is being recorded and then usually is watched, I just wanted to express my appreciation for every member of the public who's come to speak to us, for every member of our elected officials who've come to speak to us, and I applaud them, because this time every single one came. We had an issue last time where we had one commissioner that did not bother showing up. So I appreciate the 100% that came through. I appreciate the city manager's responsiveness to our need for information. I appreciate that he's empowered his employees to come and answer our questions. I also appreciate the fact that we've had access to every one of the charter officials, as well as the police chief and the fire chief. It's been a great experience, and we have put together a solid set of recommendations from a tremendous amount of information that we have had to discern with our collective experience and perspectives into a solid set of recommendations. So thank you very much. And with that, I adjourn our meeting today. See you on the 19th.